CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I explore abandoned locations I find on the dark web. There was Walmart. An alarm turned on. It said, "Attention shoppers, ignore the blood. Everything is fine." If you read this, I am not alive. Alright, so before I even start this story, let me just say, do not go looking for the kind of sights I'm about to talk about. I was stupid, reckless, and honestly, if I could take it all back, I would. I used to be one of those guys who thought horror stories about the deep web were all exaggerated. You know, those stories about hitmen for hire, human experiments, weird cults. You've probably seen some clickbait videos about it. I always figured, yeah, there's probably creepy stuff out there, but a lot of it has to be fake, right? I don't think that anymore. This started a few months ago when I was browsing some sketchy forums, just looking for urban exploration spots. See, I'm into abandoned places, old hospitals, empty malls, amusement parks that shut down years ago. There's something eerie but exciting about them. Most of the time, you find cool graffiti, rusted out cars, maybe some left behind furniture. But I wanted something more. I was scrolling through posts late one night when I found a thread titled "Unmapped Locations Found Through the Deep Web." The post was simple, just a link, a short description, and a warning. Do not go alone. Some places are not abandoned. Yeah, I should have listened. The link led to a website called noshowexplorer.net. It was basic. Just a black background with a list of coordinates. Each location had a vague description like empty warehouse in Detroit or unfinished subway tunnel, NYC. I kept scrolling until I found one that caught my eye. Walmart Supercenter, closed down, full inventory left behind. Location, redacted. Weird. I've seen a lot of abandoned stores before, but a fully stocked Walmart? That didn't make sense. I checked Google. No record of this Walmart ever existing. No news articles about it closing down. Nothing. At this point, I was hooked. I copied the coordinates into Google Maps, but it just showed an empty stretch of land near a highway. No Walmart, no parking lot, just trees. But when I switched to satellite view, it was there. A massive building, clear as day. And get this, the image was glitchy. The roof looked distorted, and parts of the parking lot were blurred out, like someone had tried to censor it. That's when I made the second dumbest decision of my life. I grabbed my GoPro, packed some flashlights, and told my roommate I was heading out for some urban exploration. I didn't tell him where. I should have. I should have told someone everything. I should have turned around the second I saw the building. I drove for about 3 hours, mostly down highways and empty back roads, until my GPS led me to a dirt path cutting through the woods. No signs, no streetlights, just tire tracks in the mud like someone had been here recently. The deeper I went, the more my stomach started to twist. The trees got denser and my phone lost service. Then, out of nowhere, the trees opened up, and there it was, a Walmart supercenter. No lights, no cars, just an enormous, rotting building sitting in the middle of nowhere, like it had been dropped there from another dimension. The Walmart sign was still up, but the letters were peeling, and parts of it had turned black, like they'd been burned. But the weirdest part? The automatic doors were wide open, not shattered, not broken, just standing open, like they were expecting me. I parked a few 100 feet away and killed my engine. No sound except the wind and the distant hum of insects. My flashlight barely cut through the dark, but from what I could see, the parking lot was cracked and covered in weeds. But there were no abandoned cars. That was the first red flag. Even the most run-down Walmarts always have a few rusted-out vehicles sitting around. But here, nothing. It was like the place had been sterilized. I sat there for a while, just watching. My heart was pounding, and for the first time in years, I actually felt scared. But I'd come all this way. I couldn't just leave. So, like an idiot, I grabbed my flashlight, strapped on my GoPro, and stepped inside. Inside the Walmart. The second I walked in, my nose was hit with the strongest smell of rotting meat I've ever experienced. It was so thick, I nearly gagged. The air was hot and stale, like the building had been sealed shut for years. But here's the thing. Everything inside looked normal. The shelves were stocked. Clothes were still on the racks. There were even shopping carts lined up near the entrance, like someone had just finished organizing them. But there was no dust, no cobwebs, no signs of decay. It was like the store had been frozen in time. I pulled out my phone to record, but of course, no signal, no Wi-Fi either. My phone's clock was still working though, and I made a mental note of the time, 2:47 a.m. I started walking. My footsteps echoed way too loud, like the place was empty, but not empty at the same time. The aisles stretched on forever, perfectly neat, perfectly stocked. But the deeper I went, the stronger that rotting smell got. Then I found the first cart. It was in the middle of an aisle, facing me, like someone had just stepped away. Inside was a pack of raw ground beef, completely black with rot, the plastic stretched tight, like it was ready to burst. But the expiration date? Next week. I checked another aisle. More carts, same setup. Like people had been shopping, but just disappeared. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe it was a prank, or an old store left behind during construction. But then the intercom crackled to life. A loud beep echoed through the store, followed by the most robotic, monotone voice I've ever heard. Attention shoppers, clean up in aisle 3. I froze. That voice wasn't normal. It was off. Too slow, too distorted, like a bad text-to-speech program. And worse, I was in aisle 3. I turned my flashlight toward the end of the aisle, and that's when I saw the blood. It was smeared across the white tiles, thick and dark, leading around the corner like something had been dragged. And then, the buzzing started. A deep, low hum filled the air, vibrating through the floor like an engine was revving up beneath me. It didn't sound like normal machinery. It sounded alive. I backed up slowly, trying not to make a sound. I needed to get the hell out of there. Then, the alarm went off. Beep. Attention shoppers, ignore the blood. Everything is fine. The lights flickered, and for a split second, I saw something huge move at the end of the aisle. Not walking, sliding. I didn't even wait. I turned and ran, sprinting towards the entrance. But the second I reached the doors, They were closed, not just locked, gone. The wide open entrance I walked through was now a solid wall of shelves, like the store had rearranged itself when I wasn't looking. I turned, heart hammering. The buzzing was louder now, rattling the metal shelves. Something was coming. Then the intercom spoke again. Shopper located, preparing for cleanup. Aisles started to move. The shelves shook, twisting and stretching like something alive was shifting them. The store layout was changing. The exit was gone. The aisles were closing in. And then I saw them. Figures started to emerge from the aisles. Tall, wrong, not human. They had the shape of people, but their skin was gray and plastic-like. Their faces blank except for gaping, black mouths stretched too wide. They were wearing Walmart uniforms, and they were all smiling. I ran. I don't know how long I was in there. The aisles twisted into a maze, trapping me inside. No matter which way I turned, I ended up back in the meat section, where the rotting smell was unbearable. That's when I saw the bodies, piled up behind the glass doors of the refrigerators. Hundreds of them, pressed against the glass like raw meat on display. Their mouths were open, eyes missing. Some of them were still moving. The buzzing turned into a scream. That's the last thing I remember before I blacked out. I don't know how long I was unconscious. The first thing I felt when I woke up was the cold. Freezing, unnatural cold, like I'd been left in a freezer all night. My head was pounding and my limbs were stiff. My vision was blurry at first, but as it cleared, I realized something was wrong. I wasn't on the floor. I was moving. My body was crammed into a shopping cart. My arms and legs folded awkwardly, like a discarded mannequin. The metal bars dug into my ribs as the cart rattled over the linoleum floor, rolling forward on its own. I tried to move, but my body felt wrong, like my nerves weren't connected right. My fingers barely twitched. Then I heard it. The intercom crackled to life, and that same cold, robotic voice echoed through the store. Cleanup in aisle 7. New product available. I wasn't breathing right. My chest was rising and falling too slow, like something else was controlling it. That's when I saw them. I was rolling down a long, endless aisle, and on either side of me were people, or at least what was left of them. They were stuffed onto the shelves like products, their bodies wrapped in plastic like raw meat. Some were missing limbs, their stumps crudely tied off with blue Walmart bags. Others were sewn together, their skin stitched in mismatched patches, like someone had been trying to build something new. Their faces were the worst part. They were all smiling. Frozen grins stretched too wide, teeth exposed down to the gums, eyes peeled open like they'd been stapled that way. Some were missing their eyes completely, just empty, black sockets staring at nothing. And the worst part? They were still breathing. I could see their chests rising and falling, slow and unnatural, like a machine was forcing air into them. Some of their fingers twitched. One of them, a man with half his face missing, turned his head slightly as I rolled past, like he was trying to look at me. I started hyperventilating. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt, and I could barely swallow the bile rising in my throat. This wasn't just some abandoned store. It was a slaughterhouse. The cart kept rolling forward, like something unseen was pushing it. The aisles around me were changing, shifting in slow, grinding movements. Shelves stretched taller, the lights overhead flickering. The deeper I went, the more the store rotted around me. Tiles cracked, ceiling panels sagged, with something wet and dark oozing through. The buzzing sound returned. Louder now. It was everywhere, vibrating through the floor and the air, like the entire building was alive. Then, I saw the butcher counter. It was ahead of me at the end of the aisle, glowing red, the glass smeared with blood and something thicker. Behind the counter, a figure was standing perfectly still. It was tall, too tall, dressed in a stained blue apron with the Walmart logo still visible. Its arms were long and thin, ending in hands that looked wrong, like the fingers had too many joints. Its head was covered in a plastic bag, stretched tight over a face that bulged in unnatural shapes beneath it. I realized the bag wasn't empty. It was filled with teeth. Human teeth, dozens of them, pressed up against the plastic from the inside, shifting slightly as the thing breathed. The cart stopped. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The thing tilted its head, the plastic bag crinkling with the movement. Then it slowly raised one of its long, twitching fingers and pointed at me. The intercom spoke again. New product ready for processing. I felt something grab my legs, number knot hands. They were cables, long metallic tendrils slithering out from beneath the shelves, wrapping around my ankles. The second they touched my skin, a burning electric shock shot through my body, making my back arch violently. I screamed. For the first time since waking up, I really screamed. Pure animalistic terror ripping out of my throat. The tendrils yanked hard, pulling me out of the cart, slamming me onto the freezing floor. My head smacked against the tiles, sending white-hot pain through my skull. And then, I was dragged, pulled backward, too fast, my limbs scraping against the rough ground. I twisted, clawing at the floor, but my nails only scraped against the cold tile. The butcher counter grew smaller as I was pulled into the darkness beyond the aisles, the buzzing growing deafening now. I was screaming so hard, my throat tore. My vision blurred from panic and pain, and my body convulsed violently from the shocks coursing through me. Then, blackness. I woke up to the sound of beeping, slow, rhythmic, mechanical, a heart monitor. I tried to move. My body didn't respond. White lights burned overhead, too bright. My mouth was dry. My arms felt wrong, like they didn't belong to me. A figure moved into my vision. A nurse. She smiled, but something was off about her face. Then she spoke, and my blood turned to ice. Attention shoppers. Ignore the blood. Everything is fine. The beeping grew faster. The buzzing returned. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. That's when I saw my hands. They weren't mine anymore. The fingers were too long. The skin was stitched together in different shades, like it had been taken from multiple people. And then I noticed the IV bag hanging next to me. It wasn't filled with liquid. It was filled with something thick, red, and clotted. I was still in the store. I had never left. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything except stare at my own hands, my own wrong hands, stitched together from other people. The seams were tight, the stitches thick and black, like whoever or whatever had done this hadn't cared about making it look clean. I could feel them. The fingers twitched when I tried to move them, but the sensations were off. Some fingers felt numb, others tingled like they were full of static, and one of them, my pinky on the left hand, felt cold, like it had been taken from a body that wasn't completely dead when it was sewn on. I tried to breathe, but my chest wasn't working right. It rose and fell too slow, like my lungs had been replaced with something artificial, something that moved on a delayed response. My heart was beating, but it felt sluggish, like it was counting down instead of keeping me alive. I wanted to cry. I wanted to rip myself apart just to make it stop. Then the nurse spoke again. "Attention shoppers, restocking in progress." She smiled, her lips stretching too wide, the skin at the corners cracking like old leather. Her teeth were perfect, but they were too white, too identical, like a set of dentures made from porcelain. She turned to someone behind her. "He's awake." Footsteps, heavy, slow footsteps, like someone was dragging their body forward. I couldn't turn my head, but from the corner of my vision, I saw something tall move into the room. The buzzing returned, deep, electric, vibrating through my skull like a distant radio transmission that my bones could pick up. It rattled through my ribs, through my new limbs, like it was inside me now. The figure loomed over me. I couldn't see its face. It was covered in a plastic bag, like the butcher from before. But this one was different. This bag wasn't filled with teeth. It was filled with eyeballs, hundreds of disembodied eyes, rolling, twitching, some of them still wet with blood. They pressed against the plastic, like they were trying to see me, the pupils dilating and shrinking in rapid, panicked movements. It leaned down, and the bag crinkled as the eyes shifted closer. Then it spoke. "Product is damaged. Repair needed." I felt something move beneath me. The bed wasn't a bed. It was metal, cold and rigid, and it was alive. It shifted beneath my weight, the surface rippling like it was breathing. Then I felt something pierce my skin. Needles, dozens of them, sliding into my arms, my legs, my spine. I started convulsing immediately. The pain was unreal, like liquid fire pumping into my veins. My back arched violently, my body spasming so hard I heard something snap. I think it was one of my ribs. "Do not resist." The nurse grabbed my face with her cold, waxy hands, forcing my mouth open. My jaw popped. Something long and metallic slithered past my lips and down my throat. I started choking, gagging, but I couldn't move, couldn't resist. I was being fed. A thick, black substance was pumped into me, burning as it crawled down my throat. It tasted like rotten meat and electricity, like something that had been dead for too long but was still trying to live. I felt it spread, first in my stomach, then in my chest, then in my head. The buzzing grew louder. I saw things that weren't in the room with me, aisles stretching into eternity, walls of meat, pulsating, breathing, watching, the ceiling peeling back to reveal something dark and infinite above me, filled with massive, staring eyes, unblinking, watching every single shopper below. The Walmart wasn't a store. It was a body, and I was becoming part of it. I was not the first. I don't know how long I was strapped to that thing. I don't know how many times they cut me open, removed something, replaced it with something else. But eventually, they let me up. My legs were wrong. They moved, but not because I wanted them to. They carried me forward automatically, slow, careful steps, like a new product being tested. My arms hung limp, but I could feel them twitching slightly, the muscles spasming on their own. The nurse led me forward. I wasn't in a hospital. I was in the back rooms of the store, endless gray hallways filled with other people. They were just like me, stitched together, moving in slow, robotic marches down the corridors. Some of them had no faces, just smooth, plastic skin stretched over a head with no features. Others had too many faces, stitched together at random, their mouths opening and closing without making a sound. They didn't look at me. They didn't look at anything. They just moved, endlessly, aimlessly, disappearing into the next hallway, like they were being guided by some unseen force. The nurse led me through a set of swinging doors, and I nearly collapsed at what I saw. The warehouse. It stretched for miles. Rows and rows of shelves, not stocked with products, but with people. Some were hanging from meat hooks, their bodies still twitching. Others were vacuum sealed in plastic, their eyes open, mouths frozen in silent screams. Some were missing limbs, their torsos placed neatly in shopping carts, ready to be rolled out. And there were shoppers, figures in blue Walmart vests, faceless, moving unnaturally, like puppets on strings. They pulled bodies off the shelves, bagged them, restocked them, replaced them. This wasn't a store. It was a processing plant. The intercom crackled to life again. Attention shoppers, restocking complete. A bell rang, and suddenly the doors to the warehouse opened. People started walking in. Normal people, real people, families, kids, couples. They pushed their carts, chatting, laughing, not seeing what was around them, not seeing the bodies, not seeing us. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I felt my own legs start moving, carrying me forward toward the shoppers. My arms twitched, my hands opened and closed, like I was testing them. I was being sent back out, as a shopper, as a product. The intercom buzzed one last time. Thank you for shopping at Walmart. The first time I saw myself, I thought it was a mistake. I was pushed toward the checkout lanes, my legs moving on their own, carrying me out of the warehouse. The shoppers around me, real, normal people, didn't react. They didn't see me, didn't see the stitched up horror I had become. Then I saw the security monitors. They were lined up near the ceiling, flickering, displaying different views of the store. Aisles, carts, registers, and in the far left screen, I saw myself. At least I thought it was me. A tall, stitched together thing in a tattered hoodie, my face covered in mismatched skin, some of it a sickly gray, some of it bruised and pulsing with black veins. My eyes, they weren't mine. One was too large, bulging out slightly, like it had been forced into the socket. The other was too small, a milky white dead thing that barely moved when I looked around. I reached up, my stiff fingers brushing against my face. The stitches were rough, still raw. The skin wasn't healing. It was just stitched in place, like I was being held together by the thinnest thread of something unnatural. That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't getting out. I wasn't me anymore. I was one of them. The intercom crackled again. Attention shoppers, today's special, fresh meat in aisle 12. A bell dinged, and suddenly the shoppers moved. All at once, like puppets on invisible strings, they turned their heads in perfect unison toward aisle 12. A woman holding a toddler in her arms stopped mid-sentence. A man in a business suit let go of his cart and walked away from it, eyes blank. They all started moving at the same time, calmly but unnaturally, like a group of wind-up dolls being set loose. I turned my head, forced to follow their dead-eyed gazes. Aisle 12. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see what was there. But my body wasn't mine anymore. My stitched-up feet started moving, forcing me forward, pulling me toward the aisle, like an invisible leash was yanking me closer, The shoppers formed a silent crowd, gathering around the end of the aisle, waiting. Something was coming. The air changed. The buzzing started again, rattling my skull, vibrating through my new stolen bones. Then the smell hit. Not rotten meat, not death. Something worse. Something alive. The meat was still alive. A sound echoed through the store. A wet, heavy dragging, like something massive was being pulled across the floor. Then, it crawled into view. I can't describe it completely. My brain won't let me. It was meat, but not human, not animal, just meat. A crawling mass of red, pulsing muscle and fat, dragging itself forward with wet, slapping limbs that twitched and formed new joints every time it moved. Its body opened and closed like it was breathing, but there was no face, no head, no clear form. And the worst part, it was whispering, not with a mouth, with every part of itself. Low, wet voices bubbling up from inside its shifting mass, whispering overlapping words that made no sense, but still sounded like speech. The shoppers didn't react. They just stood there, waiting. The intercom crackled again. Limited time offer. Taste testing now available. The shoppers moved, not in panic, not in terror, calmly, obediently. One by one, they stepped forward and tore off pieces of the meat, stuffing it into their mouths, chewing, swallowing, some of them weeping as they did it. A woman in a red dress clawed at the meat with her bare hands, ripping out a chunk and pushing it into a child's mouth, forcing him to eat, smiling as he choked on it. A teenage boy bit into it with his teeth, pulling back, strings of raw muscle snapping between his lips. A man in a McDonald's uniform grabbed a handful of the shifting flesh and rubbed it into his own face, letting the pulsing veins wrap around his skin before they sank into him, becoming part of him. I was still moving. My stolen legs carried me forward, closer, closer. I didn't want to eat it. I didn't want it inside me. But my hands, my wrong hands, were already reaching out, fingers twitching, ready to grab a piece, and a scream. The store froze. The buzzing stopped. For a second, everything felt wrong in a different way, like reality had just glitched, like the entire store had skipped a frame. The scream came again. A man, a real man, running. One of the shoppers had broken free. His eyes were wide, his face contorted in pure terror as he sprinted through the aisles, pushing past carts, knocking over displays. He wasn't moving like the others. He wasn't controlled. He had woken up too soon, and the store did not like that. The intercom voice shifted, no longer calm, no longer robotic. It was angry now. Uncooperative shopper detected. The wall shifted. The aisles moved. The store closed in around him. I heard him screaming as the shelves twisted and slammed shut, sealing the aisle like a tomb. The fluorescent lights flickered, and for a second, just a second, I saw something enormous moving above us. Not in the ceiling, above the ceiling. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that was the store. Then the wall settled. The aisle reopened. The man was gone. There was only a new product display. A bright, colorful sign read, "Limited stock, freshly ground meat, now on sale." I felt something inside me break. I wasn't going to escape. I wasn't going to wake up. I wasn't going to be me anymore. And the worst part, I wasn't alone. The others, the stitched together not people, the shoppers with empty faces, they were all around me. And they were smiling. My own mouth started to move. I didn't want it to, but my new stitched up lips pulled into a wide plastic grin, and in my head, I heard it. The intercom, buzzing, laughing, welcoming me home. Thank you for shopping at Walmart. Please come again. I never left the store, and neither will you. I am a dark web hitman. I got in one house last night and found something I can't explain inside. Alright, before I even get into this, let me just say, I know what I do is messed up. I'm not here to justify anything. I know I should probably be rotten in some underground cell for the things I've done, and after last night, I'm starting to think that might have been a better fate. So yeah, I'm a hitman. Not one of those Hollywood assassins with fancy suits and silencers. Nah, that's all fiction. What I do is much more low-tech, much more desperate. It all started a couple of years ago when I got deep into the dark web. Not that scripted, fake deep web that YouTubers make videos about. Nah, I'm talking about the real one. The kind of places where people auction off human organs like eBay listings, where you can hire someone to do anything if you pay enough in crypto. That's where I come in. I don't ask questions. I get an address, a name, and a payment in Bitcoin, Monero, or whatever else keeps things untraceable. I go in, do what I have to do, and get out. No loose ends, no looking back. I've done jobs in abandoned buildings, fancy mansions, even a Starbucks parking lot once. I've seen people beg, fight back, cry, try to bribe me. But last night was the first time I ever ran. The setup, the job was simple, or at least it should have been. The target was a man named Elliot Carter, living in some suburban neighborhood in Cincinnati, Ohio. The client was anonymous, but that wasn't unusual. What was weird, though, was the payout. 5 times my usual rate. Now, when you've been doing this as long as I have, you learn that big payouts usually mean big problems. Either the target is a cop, someone with connections, or there's something else they're not telling you. But I'm not the type to turn down easy money. I did my usual routine, scoped out the house during the day, checked security cams, watched the guy's schedule. Elliot Carter was boring as hell. Middle-aged, lived alone, no wife, no kids. His house was normal. 2 stories, modern look, probably built in the last 10 years. It was one of those places that felt like a staged home for sale. Too clean, too perfect. No security system. No cameras, no dog. This should have been the easiest job of my life. Breaking in, I waited until 2:45 a.m. when the street was dead quiet. Picked the back door lock in under a minute. I wasn't expecting anything weird, just a sleeping guy who wouldn't even hear it coming. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was off. You ever walk into a room and just feel wrong? Like, before your brain can even process what's wrong, your body just knows. That's what this was like. It was freezing inside. Not just cold, unnatural cold, like stepping into a meat locker, and the air had this smell. Not rotten, not moldy. Something stale, metallic. I moved through the house, silent, checking each room. Kitchen, clean. Living room, clean. Hallway, empty. Then I reached the stairs. That's when I heard it. A scraping sound. Not like someone moving furniture. Slow, deliberate scraping, like fingernails dragging along the walls. It was coming from upstairs. Now, this was the first real red flag, because according to my research, Elliot lived alone. No girlfriend, no roommate, no kids. So either my intel was wrong, or someone else was in that house. I pulled out my knife. Quad kills are better. Guns are messy. Step by step, I moved up, sticking close to the wall, avoiding the spots that creak. I followed the sound down the hallway, past the closed doors, until I reached the last one on the right. It was open just a crack, and inside I could hear breathing. Not normal breathing, shallow, raspy, like something trying too hard to sound human. The room. I nudged the door open with my foot. The room was pitch black. No nightlight, no glow from a phone charger. Nothing. Just a huge, empty space of darkness. Then I saw him. Elliot was sitting on the floor, back against the wall. Except something was wrong. His mouth was open too wide, like his jaw was unhinged. His eyes were pure white, rolled all the way back. And his skin. Jesus Christ, his skin. It looked peeled, like someone had taken a blade and sliced strips off his face, exposing raw, glistening flesh underneath. But he was still alive. He was shaking, whispering something over and over. I leaned in closer. It let you in. It let you in. It let you in. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the room, right where the shadows were the thickest, something moved. Not a person, not an animal, something that shouldn't exist. I didn't stay to find out more. I ran. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life. Didn't bother with the back door. I went straight through the front, left my tools behind, sprinted until my lungs felt like they were going to explode. I didn't stop until I was 3 blocks away. By the time I looked back, the house was dark, silent, like nothing had ever happened. The aftermath. I didn't go back for my stuff. I didn't finish the job. I don't even care about the money. I got the hell out of Cincinnati, booked the first flight I could find, and now I'm sitting in a cheap motel 3 states away, writing this because I don't know what else to do. I don't know who hired me. I don't know what was in that house. All I know is this. I was supposed to kill Elliot Carter last night, but something got to him first, and whatever it was, it saw me too. I didn't sleep, not after what I saw, not after what I felt in that house. I kept telling myself it was just shock, adrenaline messing with my head, my mind playing tricks on me after years of this job. But deep down, I knew. Something had seen me, and worse, it had let me go. I should have left it alone. I should have burned my phone, gone completely off the grid. But when you've done what I've done, curiosity is a disease. It infects you, digs into your skull like maggots in rotting flesh. And that's why I went back. Not to the house. I wasn't that stupid, but I needed to know who hired me. The client dark web contracts don't work like normal jobs. No real names, no direct messages. Just an encrypted inbox where people send anonymous requests. The way it works is, you get a target, you complete the job, you send proof, you get paid. But what happens when you don't complete the job? I logged into my system using a burner laptop, bounced my IP through 6 different countries, and checked my inbox. The message was already there. No subject, no name. Just a single line of text. You left the door open. My hands froze over the keyboard. My breath caught in my throat. No one should have known I was there. No one should have known I ran. I forced myself to type. Who is this? Almost instantly, the reply came. It's still hungry. I slammed the laptop shut. Nope. Nope. I was done. I grabbed my bag, my keys, shoved everything into my duffel. I was getting in my car and driving until I ran out of gas. Then I'd dump my phone, my credit cards, everything. Start over. But then, knock, knock, knock. Someone was at my motel door. My gun was in my hand before I could think. I crept to the peephole. Empty hallway. Another knock. Closer. Like whoever was on the other side was pressing their head against the door. Then A voice. Not a whisper. Not a growl. Something in between. You let it see you. The video. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. I backed away, gun up, heart slamming against my ribs. Then, my laptop screen lit up. The screen was black. Just a single video file. Playme.mp4. I stared at it. I didn't download anything. I didn't click anything. How the hell did it get there? Another knock. I clicked play. The video started inside Elliot Carter's house, from the corner of his bedroom. At first, it was just him, sitting there against the wall, head down, breathing slow. But then, something moved. Not from the hallway, not from outside, from behind the camera. The darkness behind the lens shifted, stretched, pulling itself forward, like the black itself was alive. And then I saw myself. The footage showed me entering the room, looking at Elliot, stepping closer. It showed me watching. It showed me not seeing what was behind me. I wanted to shut the laptop, throw it against the wall, but I couldn't move. Because then, in the footage, I saw it. I finally saw it. Something tall, something wrong. Limbs too long, fingers curling around the doorframe, like roots digging into flesh. Its head was low, twisted at an angle no human could survive. Its mouth stretched too wide in a grin that shouldn't have been possible. And its eyes, Jesus Christ, its eyes were looking past me, not at Elliot, not at the camera, at the future, at me, sitting in this motel room, watching the video, the panic. I slammed the laptop shut and bolted, didn't check out, didn't grab my stuff, just grabbed my keys and ran. The hallway was empty, the parking lot was empty. But when I got into my car and looked at the motel window, the curtain was open. Someone was standing inside my room. Tall, wrong, smiling. I floored it. Didn't stop for gas, didn't stop for food. Just drove until my vision blurred and my hands went numb. I don't even know where I am now. Some gas station parking lot in the middle of nowhere. I thought I was safe. Thought I'd outrun whatever the hell this was. But then I looked at my phone. I had a new message. No number. No name. Just 2 words. Look behind. And now I don't know what to do. I can't run. I can't fight. Because whatever this thing is, it doesn't want to kill me. It wants me to bring it someone else. And I think it just told me who. I should have turned off my phone, should have thrown it out the window, and kept driving until the only thing left was an empty tank and a dead man too scared to sleep. But I didn't, because no matter how much I wanted to believe this wasn't real, that this was just my brain cracking under years of murder, paranoia, and guilt, I knew the truth. It knows me. It knows my name, my face, my scent. And now, it's giving me a choice. The name. My phone screen glowed in the dark car. The gas station was completely dead. No other cars, no cashier at the register, just an empty convenience store, flickering under buzzing fluorescent lights. A place outside of time, outside of reality. I held my breath and opened the message. One name, sitting there in black text. A person I had never met, never heard of. Jason Holloway. I stared at it for too long. The letters swam in my vision, twisting, stretching. It felt like the name itself was looking back at me. Then another message. Feed it. Feed it. Jesus Christ. It wanted me to bring it someone else. That's when I understood. I was never supposed to kill Elliot Carter. Number I was supposed to replace him. The scent of fear. I started the car. No hesitation. No second guessing. Jason Holloway. Whoever he was out there somewhere. and I was going to find him, not because I wanted to, not because I cared about surviving, but because I knew that if I didn't, it would take me instead. The drive was a blur, just an endless stretch of black pavement, yellow lines flickering under the headlights. I don't even remember stopping for gas, but my tank was full and my stomach was empty. The hunger wasn't normal. It felt borrowed, like something else inside me was starving. By the time I found the address, the sun was creeping over the horizon, casting the world in a sickly gray light that felt colder than night itself. Jason lived in a shitty apartment complex in Chicago, one of those places where people kept their blinds shut, even in the middle of the day, where no one asked questions. I parked across the street and waited, watched, waited. Then, at 8:13 a.m., the door opened. A guy stepped out, early 30s, tired eyes, dressed like he hadn't slept in days. He had that look, the look of someone who knew they were already dead but hadn't accepted it yet. He glanced around, paranoid, checked his phone, lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. He knew it was coming, and that's when I understood something even worse. This wasn't random. This wasn't fate. Jason Holloway had been here before. The marked ones, I followed him. Not close, just enough to watch, to learn. Jason walked like someone who had already been running for too long, not looking over his shoulder, but knowing deep down that it wouldn't matter. He went into a McDonald's. I waited outside, heart hammering in my ribs. The hunger was worse now, not mine, something else's. And then I saw it, inside the McDonald's. Not Jason, not the cashier handing him a coffee, but the thing sitting in the booth at the far end of the restaurant. It looked human, sort of, like someone had skinned a person, kept the shape, but forgot how faces were supposed to work. It was smiling, not at Jason, not at anyone, at me, like it already knew I would fail. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Jason left the McDonald's and walked past me, completely unaware. I forced myself to follow, sweat dripping down my spine. We walked down West Madison Street, past people who didn't see me, didn't see him, didn't see what was following. Then Jason stopped, turned, and spoke. I'm not the last one. My blood went cold. He knew the game. He had played it before, and he had failed. The trade. Jason didn't run. He just stared at me with those hollow eyes, cigarette burning between his fingers. You think you're the first? He asked. You think you're special? I couldn't answer, because I wasn't. I was just another name, another pawn, another thing waiting to be fed to it. You brought it with you, Jason whispered. Didn't you? I turned my head, heart pounding. Across the street, standing motionless in the morning crowd, was the thing. Tall, wrong. Its head twisted at that impossible angle. Grin stretched so far, I swore I could see the teeth, behind the teeth, behind the teeth. People passed by it like it wasn't there, like it wasn't real, but it was, and it was waiting for me to choose. Jason exhaled, smoke curling around his face. Then he said the words that shattered me. It's already been inside you. I stepped back. My mouth went dry. What? Jason smiled, but there was no happiness in it. The moment you saw it, it saw you. The moment you heard it, it spoke your name. You were never meant to kill Carter. You were meant to replace him. And now? He dropped a cigarette. Now you feed it, or it feeds on you. The choice. I should have fought back, should have done something, anything. But deep down, I already knew the truth. There was no fighting this. Jason knew it. Elliot knew it. I was never here to kill them. I was here to take their place. And now, I had a name. A new name. One I was supposed to find. One I was supposed to bring it. Jason walked past me, fading into the crowd. A dead man walking. He wouldn't last the night. But I would, as long as I kept feeding it. My phone buzzed. I looked down. Another message. New name. Available. And just like that, I understood what I had become. I wasn't the prey. I was the hunter. And I was already starving. There's a moment when you stop being a person. You don't feel it happening. There's no switch flipping in your head. No dramatic realization. It's slow. Rotting. Like your soul has been left out in the sun too long. Softening. Breaking down into something that isn't human anymore. I think I crossed that line somewhere between watching Jason Holloway disappear into a sea of strangers and reading the new name on my phone. Because the second I saw it, the hunger inside me twisted into something else. Something worse. Something satisfied. The name. It was a woman this time. Catherine Ellis. No details. No photo. Just a name sitting on my screen, waiting, like a plate left on a table, ready to be eaten. I stared at it for too long, my stomach turning. I had a choice. I could walk away, delete everything, burn the phone, destroy my laptop, vanish into the world like a ghost. But I already knew the truth. You don't walk away from this. Jason had walked away. Elliot had walked away. And now, they were both gone. They hadn't escaped. They had just bought themselves more time. And now, I was next. Unless I found Catherine first. Unless I fed it before it decided to eat me instead. The hunt. It took me 6 hours to track her down. She wasn't hiding. She was just ordinary. That's what made it worse. Catherine Ellis was a nurse. Worked at a hospital in Seattle. 32 years old. No criminal record, no debts, no reason why something like this should be happening to her. And yet, here she was, marked. I watched her from my car as she left the hospital, exhausted, moving slow, like someone who had given too much of herself to the world. She didn't see me, didn't know I was there, didn't know that her name had already been written down somewhere in the dark. She got into a rideshare, blue Toyota, driver barely paying attention. I followed at a distance, headlights off. The hunger inside me was a twisting, curling thing now, gnawing at my ribs like a second stomach growing inside me. I knew what I had to do. I had seen the pattern. Jason, Elliot, the others before them. It doesn't kill them right away. It wants them broken first. So I wouldn't take Catherine yet. I would make her understand. I would let her see. And only then would I bring her to it. The message. She got home at 9:46 p.m. A quiet apartment in a neighborhood where no one asked questions. The kind of place where people were too busy dying in their own ways to notice what was happening next door. I parked across the street and watched as she entered the building. Then I pulled out my phone and sent her a message. You see it too, don't you? 3 dots appeared immediately, typing. Then, who is this? I smiled. She was already afraid. You felt it watching you. You've heard it at night. You know what's coming. No response. I waited. A full minute passed. Then another. Then, please, just leave me alone. I exhaled, shaking. She wasn't lying. She already knew. She had been marked for a while. And that meant something even worse. The slow death. Left my car and walked toward her apartment. No hesitation. No fear. By the time I reached her door, I could hear her breathing on the other side. She knew I was here. I didn't knock. I just stood there, hand pressed against the wood, and whispered, "Open the door." The breathing stopped. Then, the lock turned. She opened the door, and when I saw her face, I realized something horrible. She had seen it far longer than I had. Her eyes were hollow, rimmed with shadows so dark they looked painted on. She had that same emptiness Jason had. The look of someone who had been running for so long, they had forgotten why they even started. "You're one of them," she whispered. I stepped inside. She didn't run, because she already knew there was no point. The truth Catherine sat on the couch. I stood in front of her, watching. Neither of us spoke. Then she broke. "I did everything right," she whispered. I moved. I changed my number. I stopped using my real name online. But it always finds me. I didn't answer, because I knew she was right. "You think it's going to let you live?" she asked. "It won't." Something shifted in the shadows of the room. Not inside the apartment. Inside us. A pressure, a presence, curling around my spine like a hand pressed against the back of my skull. Catherine felt it too. Her fingers twitched, jaw clenching. Something deep inside her was waking up. "They don't just want to eat us," she whispered. Her eyes rolled back, just for a second. A flash of something behind them, something not human. "They want to wear us." My stomach twisted. The hunger was getting worse. It wasn't mine. It was inside her, growing. And I realized then, I wasn't here to kill Catherine. I was here to replace her. The same way Jason replaced Elliot. The same way someone before them had replaced Jason. We weren't just feeding it. We were becoming it. The last night, she reached for me. I didn't stop her, because I knew what came next. I saw it in her face, her hollow eyes, the thing behind her skin pulling the strings. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was hungry. She leaned forward, voice barely a whisper. "Give me a name." I shook. The hunger, the pressure, the thing crawling inside my head, gnawing at my thoughts. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I opened my mouth, and I spoke the name on my phone. I don't know if it was real. I don't know if I was the one who even said it. But Catherine smiled, and I knew. I wasn't the hunter anymore. I was the meal. You don't understand hunger until it's inside you. I don't mean the kind that gnaws at your stomach after skipping a few meals. I don't mean the sharp emptiness that makes your hands shake and your vision blur. I mean the kind that moves, the kind that grows like a second mouth inside you, stretching, pulsing, whispering, the kind that isn't yours. That's what I felt as I sat across from Catherine Ellis, her dead eyes locked onto mine, a thin, knowing smile on her lips. And that's when I knew. I wasn't leaving this apartment, not as myself. The hunger that walks, something had changed in the air. It wasn't cold, it wasn't hot. It was thick, heavy, like breathing through tar. Catherine leaned closer, her pupils swallowing what was left of her eyes. Her skin, Jesus Christ, her skin was shifting, slowly, like the muscles underneath weren't used to holding a human shape. She was waiting for me to say the name again, because that's how it works. It doesn't just feed, it spreads. Elliot said a name, Jason said a name, and now I'd said one too, and that meant I felt it move. Not her, not me. Something in the walls. A slow, wet sound, like flesh peeling away from bone. I turned my head, just slightly, just enough to see. A mouth. A black, yawning hole in the corner of the room, stretched wide, pulsing, breathing. A face inside it. It was smiling. My face. I felt something crack inside me, something that wasn't bone. The new name. You feel it now, don't you? Catherine whispered. I could barely hear her, because I did. I felt everything, the others before me, the way their bodies had rotted away, not from age, not from time, but from something feeding from the inside out, the way their faces had peeled, their voices had melted into echoes, their eyes had become black holes swallowing everything they once were. I saw it all. Jason, Elliot, the ones before them, the ones inside me now. And I knew Catherine wasn't the monster. She was just the last one to lose. The thing inside her was wearing her, just like it was about to wear me. The ritual. I tried to move. I couldn't. My fingers dug into my own thighs, nails breaking the skin, but I didn't feel it. The thing in the corner, the mouth with my face, was closer now. It wasn't moving. It was dragging, like the whole room was pulling me toward it, pulling my reflection away from my body, until soon I wouldn't be the one wearing my skin anymore. Catherine placed a hand on my chest. It burned, not like fire, like acid. I gave it Jason, she murmured. Jason gave it Elliot. Elliot gave it someone before him. That's how we live. My body seized. The hunger inside me screamed. Give it a name. The words weren't hers. They came from inside her, inside me, inside the walls. I clenched my jaw. I fought. I tried to pull away, but my own body was betraying me. The thing inside me forcing me forward, forcing me open. And then I saw the next name. It wasn't written down. It wasn't whispered to me. It crawled out of my teeth like a living thing, curling between my lips, bleeding into the air. It was already decided. It had always been decided. And when I saw it, my stomach dropped. The last name. I recognized it. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't random. It was someone I knew. Someone I'd laughed with, fought with, lived with. Someone I loved. And that's when I understood. It had never been about survival. It had never been about me. It had always been about getting me to this point. Because that's how the game really works. It doesn't want anyone. It wants someone that will break you. The name was on my tongue now, bubbling up like blood in my throat, ready to be given, to be fed, to be swallowed by the thing waiting in the dark. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I bit down. My own teeth cracked against my tongue, slicing it open, filling my mouth with copper and rot. I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't give it the name. And that's when I heard it. Laughter. But not Catherine's. Not mine. Not human. The price of losing. Something wet slithered across my skull. Inside it. Through it. Like hands pressing against the inside of my skin, searching for a way out. I wasn't alone anymore. Catherine smiled, eyes rolling back as her skin began to melt. She had won. She had been set free. And now I was taking her place. I felt it, my face splitting, my fingers lengthening, my spine snapping backward like a broken marionette. I was still sitting on the couch, but at the same time, I was somewhere else, everywhere else, inside the walls, the floors, the city, the world. A shadow growing, a hunger that would never end, a thing wearing my skin, and no one would ever know. Because I would walk out of that apartment. I would look normal, sound normal, be normal, until I found the next name, until I felt the next hunger, until the cycle started again. And when you saw me, when you read the story, when you remember my name, you'll already be next. There is no final part for now. There never was. But don't worry, you'll understand soon. When you hear it whispering, when you feel it inside you, when you get your own name, and when you finally understand what it means to be hollow meat. I am a dark web child psychiatrist, and there is something very off about the kid I am treating. Alright, so before I start, let me just say, this is not a joke, not a creepypasta, and not some exaggerated horror story to get clicks. I wish it was. I really, really do. But everything I'm about to tell you actually happened, and I have no idea if I'll even be able to sleep after writing this. Let me introduce myself. I'm a licensed child psychiatrist. Been in the field for about 12 years now. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic, just your typical overworked therapist dealing with kids who have anxiety, behavioral issues, and sometimes more severe conditions like schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder. Pretty normal, right? Except about a year ago, I made the absolute worst mistake of my career. See, things were slow at my clinic, and I needed money. Bad. I had just moved to a bigger city, New York, for those asking. Rent was insane, and even though I was picking up extra patients, it wasn't cutting it. A friend of mine, let's call him Dan, joked about how people were making stupid amounts of money doing work on the deep web. Not the usual sketchy stuff, but things like consulting, private contracting, even medical services. It was stupid, I know, but I was desperate. So one night, I got a secure browser, VPN, and started browsing forums where people looked for specialized services. Most were scams or shady as hell, but then I found a private psychiatric network. It looked legit. There were actual doctors discussing cases, posting job requests, even talking about new therapy techniques. The only weird part, no real names, no credentials, just usernames. That should have been my first red flag. The first contact. After lurking for a while, I got a direct message from a user named Dr. Amen. Dr. Amen, I have a client in need of urgent pediatric psychiatric evaluation. High compensation. Absolute discretion required. It was weird, but the payment was ridiculous. $15,000 upfront just for an evaluation. That's more than I make in 2 months. I figured, worst case, it was some paranoid rich parent who wanted a private consultation. I said yes. Immediately, I got an email with a case file. No real names, no addresses, just patient name, Adam, age, 9 years old, symptoms, severe disassociation, lack of emotional response, violent tendencies, additional notes, displays non-human behaviors. That last part freaked me out, but the next email had a Zoom link. I was supposed to meet the kid that night. I should have backed out. I should have shoved my laptop, blocked the email, and never looked back. But I didn't. Meeting Adam. So, I clicked the Zoom link at exactly 11 p.m. The screen loaded, and at first, it was completely black. No video, no sound. Just my own reflection staring back at me. Then suddenly, a camera flickered on, and there he was. A small boy, sitting in a completely empty white room. No toys, no furniture, nothing. Just him, wearing a white t-shirt, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Behind him, there was a single wooden door with a steel lock on it. I tried to keep my voice normal. Hi, Adam. My name is Dr. M. I'm here to help you. No response. The kid just stared at me, and I mean really stared, unblinking, completely still. Kids get nervous during therapy, but this was different. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't scared. He was studying me, like he was trying to figure out what I was. I glanced at the screen, checking for a parent or guardian. Nothing. Just him. Is there an adult with you, Adam? I asked. He blinked. Once. Then he smiled. Not a normal kid smile. Not a shy or nervous smile. This was wrong. Way too wide. Lips stretching just a little too far. like he was mimicking an expression he didn't quite understand. And then he spoke, in a voice that did not belong to a 9-year-old. "Doctor, do you want to see my real face?" I felt my stomach drop. My mouth went dry, and I almost ended the call right there. But I didn't, because before I could react, before I could even breathe, the screen started glitching, like full-on static, pixelation, weird distortion, and then, for a split second, just long enough for my brain to register it, his face changed. What I saw, I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't just a weird face or a distortion. It was like his entire skull shifted, like his eyes got too big and too dark, like his skin stretched over something else underneath. For a single frame of the video, I swear to God, his mouth was too wide, too sharp, too full of teeth. Then it was gone. Adam was normal again, sitting in that blank room, staring at me with that too big smile. I was done. I stammered out something like, "I think our connection is bad. We'll have to reschedule." But before I could click end call, Adam leaned forward, and he whispered, "You already let them in." Click. The call disconnected. I sat there, staring at my screen, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. My apartment was dead silent, and then, I swear on my life, something knocked on my bedroom door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, staring at my bedroom door, every nerve in my body screaming at me to run, to get out, to grab my keys, to leave the apartment and never come back. But I couldn't, because that knock, it hadn't come from my front door. It had come from inside my bedroom. I live alone. My apartment is small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, tiny kitchen, barely enough space for a couch. There is no way in hell anyone could have gotten inside without me hearing them. But someone, something, was standing on the other side of that door. I swallowed, my throat dry as sandpaper. My laptop was still open. The Zoom call ended, the screen black, but I could still see my own reflection in it. And the longer I stared at it, the more I realized I wasn't alone in the room anymore. I saw it in the reflection first. A shape. Something tall. Too tall. Standing in the corner of my room, just behind me. I whipped around so fast my chair nearly tipped over. Nothing. Just my closet, my nightstand, my window showing the dark city skyline. My own breath was too loud, my pulse pounding in my ears. Maybe I was seeing things. Maybe my brain was still rattled from the call, from Adam's, or whatever the hell he was, face glitching like that. But then, the door handle started turning. Slow, deliberate, like whoever, or whatever, was on the other side wasn't in a hurry, like it was enjoying this. I fucking lunged for my nightstand drawer, yanking it open. My fingers closed around the pocket knife I kept there, even though I knew it wouldn't do shit against whatever the fuck was in my apartment. But before I could even flip the blade open, the handle stopped turning. Silence. Thick, heavy silence. I didn't move. I just stood there, my pulse hammering, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Then, in the absolute dead quiet of my room, a voice, from the other side of the door, whispering, but not just any whisper. It was my voice. It was me, speaking back to myself, mimicking the exact way I had spoken during the Zoom call. "Is there an adult with you, Adam?" I almost dropped the knife. I knew that voice. It was mine. Exactly mine. Every inflection, every pause, even the nervous way I had spoken to Adam. "I think our connection is bad. We'll have to reschedule." I stepped back. My knees nearly buckled. Then, something slammed against the door. Hard. Not like a knock. Like something had thrown its full weight against it, rattling the hinges. I fucking ran. I didn't even think. I sprinted for my front door, gripping my keys so hard they bit into my palm. I didn't look back. I didn't care if my laptop was open, if my phone was on my desk, if I left the goddamn lights on. I just ran. The hotel, I don't even remember getting in my car. All I know is I drove, fast, reckless, desperate, until I hit a part of the city with lights, people, noise. I parked in front of the first cheap hotel I saw, stumbled inside, and threw my credit card at the guy at the desk. I barely remember checking in. I barely remember getting to the room, but once I was inside, I locked the door. Deadbolt. Chain. Even shoved a chair under the handle, like I was in some shitty horror movie. Then I just sat on the bed, staring at my shaking hands. What the fuck just happened? Was it real? Had I imagined it? I tried to tell myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, my mind playing tricks on me after that freaky Zoom call. But then, my phone vibrated. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was an email from Dr. Amen. You shouldn't have left. I felt physically sick. I turned my phone off, threw it across the room, and just sat there, trying not to fucking hyperventilate. Then, outside my hotel room, I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, stopping right in front of my door. I clamped my hands over my mouth, forcing myself not to make a sound. I could hear breathing, right on the other side. Then, a soft, barely there whisper. You already let them in. And then, a knock. 1, 2, 3. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then, something slid under the door. A Polaroid photo. It took me a full minute to force myself to move, to crawl toward the door, reach out, and pick it up with shaking fingers. I turned it over, and my blood went cold. It was a photo of me, sitting on my bed, in this hotel room. The timestamp? 10 seconds ago. I dropped the photo. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just sat there, staring at it, my entire body locking up with a kind of primal, animalistic terror I had never felt before. Because in the photo, standing right behind me, was a tall, dark shape. Its face was blurred, but its smile wasn't. Too wide. Too many teeth. I turned around so fast, I nearly threw up. Nothing. Just an empty room. But I swear, I could still hear breathing. I don't remember sleeping. I don't even remember blinking. 1 second, I was sitting on the bed in my shitty hotel room, staring at the impossible photo of myself. The one that had been slipped under my door while I was still in the room. The next, I was somewhere else, somewhere wrong. The room that shouldn't exist. It was dark, not the kind of dark you get when you turn the lights off at night. Number. This was thick, suffocating, absolute. The kind of dark that shouldn't exist in real life. The kind that made my skin crawl with the feeling that something was in it, moving, breathing, watching. I felt cold, barefoot. The floor beneath me was wrong. It wasn't tile or carpet. It was warm, damp, textured, almost like skin. I reached out blindly, my fingers brushing against a wall. Not drywall, not brick. Something soft, something that pulsed. I jerked my hand back so fast I nearly fell. My breath came out in ragged, shallow gasps. My heart was hammering so hard it felt like my ribs were rattling. I wasn't in the hotel anymore. I wasn't anywhere human. And then, a light flickered on, Damonsoy's sickly yellow. And suddenly, I wasn't alone. The chairs. There were other people, or at least there used to be. Lined up in a row right in front of me were 6 chairs, and in each chair sat a person, only they weren't alive. At least, I don't think they were. They were wrong. Each one was staring straight ahead, unblinking. Their faces were frozen in expressions of terror, mouths open too wide, eyes bulging, like they had been screaming when they died. Their hands were nailed to the arms of the chairs. Their feet were missing. Just stumps at the ends of their legs. The wounds so clean, so precise, it didn't even look like blood had spilled, like they had been carved away. And then I saw their faces. I knew them. Dan, my friend, the one who told me about the deep web jobs, my ex-girlfriend, the one I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, my old boss, my fucking neighbor. They were all here, sitting in those chairs, dead. Or at least I thought they were, until one of them moved, the man with no eyes. I couldn't move. I couldn't fucking breathe. Dan, the one in the middle, his head twitched, his mouth opened, and a sound came out. Not a word, not a groan, a wet, rattling whisper, like something was crawling up his throat. Run! I wanted to. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't, because something was behind me. I felt it, too tall, too close, too wrong. I turned my head a fraction of an inch, and I saw it, the man with no eyes, 7 feet tall, wearing a suit that looked stitched together from skin. His face, Jesus Christ, his face, where his eyes should have been, there were just 2 gaping black holes, empty, hungry, and his mouth was a ragged vertical slit, stretching from his chin to his forehead, like someone had cut it open and left it there. It was smiling, and then he spoke, not with a voice, with mine. You shouldn't have left. I fucking ran, the black door. I don't know where I was running to. I don't even know if I was really moving. The floor under my feet shifted, pulsed, like I was running across the back of some enormous living thing. The walls twisted, the air hummed, and behind me, I could hear him, the man with no eyes. His footsteps were wrong, not shoes hitting the floor, something wet, sticky, crawling. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just kept running, my breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps, until I saw it. A door, black, glossy, sitting in the middle of the room, no frame, no hinges, just a door. I lunged for it, grabbed the handle, and yanked. It swung open, and then I was falling, back to reality, or something like it. I woke up in my car, not the hotel, not the black room, my fucking car, in the parking lot of a McDonald's. The sun was up. People were walking past me, sipping coffee, eating breakfast, like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't just been in some nightmare dimension full of dead people and eyeless monsters. I sat there, hands clenched around the steering wheel, shaking so bad I thought I might pass out. Was it a dream? A hallucination? I didn't know, until I looked at the passenger seat. Something was sitting there, a Polaroid photo, with a timestamp, 3:33 a.m. It was a picture of me, sitting in that black room, with the man with no eyes standing right behind me, and written on the back, "You already let them in." I don't know how long I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring at that Polaroid like it was a ticking bomb. Like if I blinked, if I breathed the wrong way, something would happen, something worse. Because I knew I hadn't taken that picture. I hadn't posed in that black room. I hadn't let anyone take a fucking photo of me while the man with no eyes loomed over my shoulder, grinning with that grotesque, vertical slit of a mouth. But there it was, Proof. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't stress. This was real. The stranger at McDonald's. I forced myself to move. I shoved the Polaroid under the passenger seat and stepped out of the car, my legs shaking so bad I almost collapsed right there in the McDonald's parking lot. I needed to be around people, normal people. I needed to feel the weight of reality pressing back against me. So I walked inside, and I froze, because at one of the tables, sitting perfectly still, was Adam, the kid from the Zoom call, the thing that shouldn't be real. He was sitting alone, a tray in front of him, untouched food on it. A happy meal. A fucking happy meal. Like some normal kid, like some regular 9-year-old who had parents, who had a home, who hadn't just dragged me into something I couldn't understand. He turned his head, smiled. That too wide, too human, but not human enough smile. And then he waved. The man with no eyes finds me. Again, I backed away. I spun around, ready to run, to get in my car and just drive until my body gave out. But then I saw him, standing outside, the man with no eyes, standing right next to my car, his face tilted slightly, like he was watching me, like he was waiting. The sun was out, broad fucking daylight, and no one noticed him. People were walking past him, sipping their coffees, checking their phones, not even looking, like he wasn't even there, like he was just a shadow at the edge of their vision. But I saw him, and he saw me. His mouth, his horrible, vertical, torn open mouth, began to stretch, and he whispered. I couldn't hear it, not exactly, but I felt it, inside my skull, like a thought that wasn't mine. You let us in. I turned back to Adam. He was gone. The police can't help. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. Out of McDonald's, into my car, peeling out of the parking lot so fast, my tires shrieked against the pavement. I had no idea where I was going. I just drove. And then, before I even realized what I was doing, I was in front of a police station. I don't know what I expected. I don't know what I thought they could do. But I went inside. I walked right up to the front desk, hands shaking, heart jackhammering against my ribs, and I told them, all of it. The Zoom call, the black room, the corpses in the chairs, the thing with no eyes following me, and the officer behind the desk. He just stared at me, didn't say a word, didn't blink. Then, slowly, too slowly, he reached under the desk, pulled out a Polaroid, and slid it across the counter, face down. I didn't want to flip it over. I didn't. But my hands were moving on their own, trembling fingers grasping the edges of the photo, turning it over. It was me, sitting in my car, from 5 minutes ago. I dropped the picture. The cop, his face didn't change. He just smiled. And then he spoke, in my own voice. You already let them in. I ran. The world isn't right anymore. I don't know how I got back to my apartment. 1 second, I was sprinting out of that police station, lungs burning, vision tunneling. The next, I was unlocking my front door, stumbling inside. It was dark. I hadn't left it dark. I always left a lamp on, but every light in my apartment was off. I reached for the switch, flipped it. Nothing. The power was out. My phone vibrated. An email from Dr. Amen. You shouldn't have run. Now they're in everything. I turned my phone off, threw it across the room. I wasn't playing this game anymore. I wasn't doing this. Then, the TV turned on, static, at first. Then, a live feed of my bedroom, a camera angle that shouldn't exist, and standing in the corner of my room, the man with no eyes, still, silent, watching me. I turned, looked down the hall. The bedroom door was open, the lights inside were flickering, and I swear to God, I could hear him breathing. There's no way out. I left. Didn't pack. Didn't grab my wallet. Didn't even put on my shoes. I just left. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again. But I know one thing. They were never following me. They were never outside, waiting to get in. They've been inside this whole time, watching, waiting. And now they're in everything. The screens, the photos, the people. And I think they're in me too. I don't know how long I've been running. Days, weeks. Time doesn't feel real anymore. The world has turned into something thin, something stretched and unnatural, like reality is peeling away at the edges. I can feel them inside me now. I can hear their voices in my head, software, whispering, telling me things I shouldn't know. I don't know if I can fight it much longer. I don't know if I even want to. I'm not alone. I don't stay in one place for long. Hotels, motels, empty houses. I move constantly, but no matter where I go, they're always there. The man with no eyes, Adam, and the others. I see Dan sometimes, my ex, my boss, the ones who were in the chairs, the ones who were dead. They aren't supposed to be walking around, but I see them. In gas stations, in crowded streets, in the reflection of my phone screen. They're watching me, and they're smiling, like they're waiting for me to finally give up, to let go, to become one of them. I think I'm already halfway there. The radio station. A week ago, at least I think it was a week, I found myself in some nowhere town in Arizona. One of those places with one gas station, a diner, and a bunch of empty roads. I hadn't slept in days. I was starving. I needed to stop, to breathe, to think. That's when I saw it. A radio station, just sitting there, in the middle of the desert. No lights, no people, just an open door, inviting me inside. So I went in, and the moment I stepped inside, the radio turned on. A voice crackled through the static. My voice, but not an old recording. It was me, speaking in real time, saying the words I was thinking. I don't know how long I'd been running. I staggered back, my breath hitched in my throat, and then another voice joined in. Low, hollow, wrong. You can't run forever. The man with no eyes. His voice was inside the radio, inside the walls, the air. I bolted, ran out into the desert, my feet pounding against the sand. I didn't stop running until I was miles away, lungs on fire, my head spinning, my vision warping at the edges. And when I finally collapsed onto my knees, gasping for air, I heard the radio, still playing, somewhere in the distance, like it was following me, like it was inside me now. The black vomit, 2 nights ago. I woke up in the back seat of an abandoned car. I was burning up, sweating, shaking, my stomach twisting itself into knots. Something was wrong. I stumbled out of the car and onto the highway, barely able to stand. My skin felt too tight, too hot, like something was crawling underneath it. I collapsed, and then I started vomiting. But it wasn't normal. It wasn't food. It wasn't bile. It was black. Thick, oily black liquid spilling out of me in violent, heaving waves. It kept coming and coming, gushing from my mouth in unnatural amounts, pooling onto the asphalt beneath me. I should have been empty. I should have been dead. But it just kept coming, like something was forcing it out of me, like something inside me was trying to escape. And then, in the middle of that black puddle, in the reflection of the vomit itself, I saw him, the man with no eyes, standing right behind me, watching, smiling, and when I turned, he was gone. but I could still feel him, like he was closer than ever, like he was inside my skin. I think I'm changing. It's getting harder to think. My memories don't feel real anymore. I'll look at my hands and they won't feel like mine. I'll hear voices that sound like me, but aren't. I'll wake up somewhere I don't remember falling asleep. And worst of all, I'll see myself, standing across the room, standing in a mirror, standing at the end of the bed, a copy of me, a version that isn't me. And sometimes it smiles, and its mouth is too wide, the lost Polaroid. I woke up in a gas station bathroom tonight. No idea how I got here, no memory of walking inside. I looked in the mirror. I was pale, eyes sunken, lips cracked, and then I saw it, sitting on the sink, a Polaroid, face down. I already knew what it was before I picked it up, but I turned it over anyway. And there I was, sitting in the black room. The chairs were full, but this time I was in one of them. My eyes were black pits, my mouth was stretching open, and the timestamp? It was tomorrow. There's no escape. I don't know what happens next. I don't think it matters, because I can feel it now. The man with no eyes, the things inside the screens, the things that wear our faces, they aren't following me anymore, because they don't need to. I can hear them in my breath. I can feel them in my pulse. And I know they've already won, because I'm one of them now. And soon, so will you. You already let them in. I discovered the part of the deep web that we aren't supposed to see. I wish I never stumbled across it. Alright, so I know everyone says never go on the deep web, but let's be real. Most of us are at least a little curious. I always thought those stories about red rooms, hitmen, and black market organs were just internet boogeyman stuff. Like, sure, some dark corners of the web exist, but what were the odds of a normal guy like me actually stumbling into something real? Well, I was wrong, and I really, really wish I wasn't. So, a little background. I'm a college student, 21, studying cybersecurity. I won't say which school, but it's a big one. You'd think that knowing a thing or two about hacking would make me less likely to do something stupid. But I guess curiosity is a hell of a drug. I wasn't into anything illegal, but I'd mess around on forums, visit weird conspiracy sites, that kind of thing. One night, I was hanging out in my dorm, scrolling Reddit, when I got a Discord message from an old friend. Let's call him Ethan. We hadn't talked since high school, so it was kinda random. The message just said, "Yo, you still into deep web stuff?" I replied with something like, "LOL kinda, why?" And he immediately sent a link. It was a .onion address, meaning it was only accessible through Tor, the browser people use to access the deep web. No explanation, just a link. Now, I know, clicking random deep web links is a certified bad idea, but Ethan was always into tech like me, so I figured it was some weird joke or an underground forum. Nothing too crazy, right? I fired up Tor, typed in the link, and hit enter. The page loaded instantly. No errors, no captures, just a blank black screen with a single line of text. Welcome, invitee, proceed. Underneath it were two buttons, yes and no. At this point, I was already getting uneasy, but I clicked yes because, well, I was an idiot. The screen changed. A chat box popped up, and before I could type anything, messages started appearing, one after the other. User 457, who invited you? User 893, rules are clear, no outsiders. User 1, 627. If they don't belong, they don't leave. I was about to close the tab when a final message appeared. Proceeding with verification. Then, my webcam turned on. I didn't even have time to react before a countdown started at the top of the screen. 10, 9, 8. My heart dropped. Someone was watching me. I grabbed a piece of tape and slammed it over my webcam, but the countdown kept going. 7, 6, 5. I yanked out my laptop's battery, killing the screen instantly. For a second, I just sat there, staring at the dead laptop in my lap. My dorm was silent, except for the hum of my mini fridge. I told myself it was just some creepy scare tactic, that my webcam must have been compromised earlier, maybe from a virus or something. But then, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Why did you do that?" My stomach twisted. There was no way this was real. Probably Ethan messing with me, right? I typed back, "Not funny, dude." 3 dots popped up immediately, like they were already typing. "You were invited. You proceeded. You don't get to leave now." I turned my phone off. Full shutdown. My hands were shaking as I stared at the blank screen. A knock came at my door. I froze. I live in a dorm building, so people come and go all the time, but it was 2:17 a.m. Who the hell would be knocking at this hour? Another knock, louder this time. I slowly got up, moving as quietly as I could. My room had a peephole, but when I looked through it, no one was there. I waited, held my breath. Maybe I was just sleep deprived and freaking myself out for no reason. But just as I started to relax, something slid under my door. A small white envelope. I stared at it, half expecting it to burst into flames or something. After what felt like hours, I forced myself to pick it up. The paper was smooth, too clean, like it had just been printed. Inside was a single piece of paper. 3 words, typed in plain black font. "See you soon." I dropped the letter and backed away. My chest was so tight it hurt. Then, my laptop, still completely dead, battery removed, lit up. The screen stayed black, but a single line of white text appeared. "Running won't help." That's when I grabbed my keys and got the hell out of there. I don't remember much about leaving my dorm that night. Just that I grabbed my keys, my hoodie, and my phone, which I stupidly turned back on. My body was running on pure adrenaline, my thoughts racing too fast to make sense of anything. That letter, the text, my laptop turning on by itself. Someone was watching me. Someone knew where I lived. I couldn't stay there. I needed to get out. I bolted down the stairwell, skipping 2-3 steps at a time. The hallway lights buzzed, flickering weakly. I kept my head down as I passed the front desk. Thankfully, the night guard was slumped over, half asleep. I shoved open the glass doors and stepped into the cold. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few scattered cars under the yellow streetlights. I hurried to my old Toyota and practically threw myself inside, locking the doors the second I shut them. My breath was uneven, fogging up the windshield. I just needed to think, figure out what the hell was happening. I reached for my phone. The second I touched it, it buzzed. A new text. Same unknown number. "Don't go home." My stomach twisted. I hadn't told anyone I was leaving, hadn't messaged a friend, hadn't even posted on Snapchat. But someone, they, knew exactly what I was doing. I gripped the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles turned white. I wanted to believe it was some elaborate prank, that Ethan was screwing with me. But deep down, I already knew this was real. and it was only getting worse. I didn't go home. Hell, I didn't even know where I was driving. I just knew I had to move. I pulled out of the lot and sped down the empty streets, barely stopping at red lights. My eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, half expecting headlights to appear. For the first hour, nothing happened. Then, I saw it. A black SUV. No plates. It showed up behind me, near a gas station, about a mile from campus. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then, when I took a random left turn, it did too. I made another turn. It followed. My hands were sweating, slipping against the wheel. Okay, maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's nothing. I switched lanes. So did they. I turned onto an empty side road. South did. They. That's when I knew. I wasn't imagining this. Someone was following me. My heart was beating out of my chest. I wasn't armed. I wasn't some action movie hero who knew how to lose a tail. I was just a terrified college kid who had seen too much. I stepped on the gas. The engine roared as I shot past darkened storefronts, past a closed McDonald's and a dead strip mall. The SUV kept up easily. They weren't trying to stop me. They were toying with me. My mind raced. I needed to get to a public place, somewhere with people. I swerved onto the main road, scanning the sidewalks for anything open this late. That's when I spotted the glowing green mermaid of a 24-hour Starbucks. I didn't hesitate. I veered into the parking lot, tires screeching. The SUV kept going, disappearing down the road. I sat there, gripping the wheel, trying to catch my breath. Maybe I lost them. Maybe they just wanted to scare me. I stepped inside the Starbucks, the smell of burned coffee hitting me instantly. It was mostly empty, except for 2 baristas and some guy in the corner, typing away on his laptop. I ordered something just to blend in and sat near the door, eyes flicking between the window and my phone. I pulled up Ethan's number and texted him. "Dude, what the hell did you send me?" No reply. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. I swore under my breath. The clock on the wall read 3:42 a.m. I needed a plan. I decided I'd crash at a motel for the night. Somewhere cheap, somewhere anonymous. First thing in the morning, I'd go to the police. I was halfway through my coffee when I noticed something. The guy with the laptop. He wasn't typing anymore. He was staring at me. I froze. He was mid-30s, wearing a wrinkled suit, his skin pale, like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. His eyes, God, his eyes, hollow, empty, like he wasn't really looking at me, but through me. He raised his phone, took a picture, then smiled. I grabbed my cup and booked it. I was done playing this game. I sprinted to my car and peeled out of the lot, heart hammering. I didn't care where I went. I just needed to get as far away as possible. I drove for hours, didn't stop until I hit a rundown motel off the highway. Checked in using cash. No real name. No paper trail. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and something rotting under the bed, but I didn't care. I locked the door, put the chair against it, tried to breathe. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. I really didn't. But I did. A new text. "You're making this difficult." Then, an image. I felt my stomach drop as I opened it. It was me, taken just minutes ago, lying on the motel bed, face turned toward the window, eyes closed. I was asleep. The message that followed. "Good night." I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember closing my eyes. But when I woke up, my head was pounding, my mouth was dry, and the motel room was wrong. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't the same cigarette-stained musk from before. It was sharper, stale, like metal and something rotting. My brain was still swimming in a haze, but my instincts screamed at me. Something isn't right. I sat up, trying to shake the dizziness. The clock on the wall read 6:43 a.m. Then I saw my phone. It was on the nightstand, right where I left it. But the screen was on. The camera app was open. And there, frozen in the image preview, was me, lying on the bed, eyes open, staring blankly at the ceiling. I snatched it off the nightstand, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. My body was buzzing with adrenaline, but my limbs felt slow, drugged. Someone had been here. Someone had been in my room. I scanned the room, heart pounding. Everything looked the same. The chair was still wedged under the doorknob. The window was still latched shut. But I knew something was off. That smell, that rotting metallic smell. I turned my gaze toward the bathroom. The door was open just a crack, revealing nothing but blackness inside. I felt my stomach knot. Number? No way. But then I saw it. A single bloody handprint on the edge of the door. It wasn't mine. My breath hitched. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I had two choices, run or look, and like a complete idiot, I chose to look. I stood up, nearly collapsing from the dizziness, and staggered to the bathroom. My legs felt like cement. My vision was blurry, but I kept my eyes on that dark doorway. I reached out with a trembling hand and pushed the door open. The light flickered on automatically, and that's when I saw it. The bathtub was full, but not with water, not with anything natural. Inside was a thick black liquid, like ink, swirling slowly as if it were alive. Floating on the surface, just barely visible beneath the darkness, were shapes. Fingers, human fingers. Some still had wedding bands. One had a cracked, purple painted nail. I staggered backward, slamming into the wall. My stomach lurched. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But then I saw the mirror, and I forgot how to breathe, because the reflection wasn't me. It was someone else, or rather, something else. It had my face, my skin, my messy hair, but its mouth was too wide, stretching into something that was almost a grin, but not quite. Its eyes were wrong. The pupils were too large, too deep, like black holes swallowing light. Then, it blinked. I didn't. My stomach dropped. I turned away. So did it. But I hadn't moved. I was frozen, and it was still moving. I did the only thing I could. I ran. I slammed out of the bathroom, nearly tripping over myself as I grabbed my bag and my keys. I didn't check out. I didn't look back. I just threw open the motel door and bolted to my car. The morning air was too bright, too sharp against my skin. I was shaking. I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. But as I looked up at my rearview mirror, my stomach dropped. The motel room door, it was still open, and in the darkness beyond it, something was standing there. I couldn't see its face. I didn't want to. I peeled out of the parking lot so fast, my tires screeched. I drove for hours, my thoughts racing too fast to make sense of anything. The text messages, the SUV, the Starbucks guy, the thing in the mirror. This wasn't random. This wasn't some deep web hacker playing games. This was something else. Something I wasn't supposed to see. I needed help. Real help. I decided to call the police. I pulled over at a gas station, my hands still shaking as I dialed 911. It rang, and rang, and rang. Then, click. Silence. Then breathing. Slow. Raspy. Then, a voice. But it wasn't a dispatcher. It wasn't human. It was low, distorted, like something trying to imitate speech. You can't wake up if you are never asleep. I threw the phone down like it had burned me. My hands were ice cold. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. I needed to think. I needed to figure this out. But then, my phone buzzed. A new text. No number. Just 2 words. Turn around. I felt a presence. A shadow growing behind me. A whisper that wasn't sound, but a pressure in the air. I didn't turn around. I slammed on the gas. My tires screamed as I shot back onto the highway. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew one thing. I couldn't stop. Because whatever this was, it wasn't done with me yet. I don't know how long I drove. Could have been hours. Could have been minutes. Time didn't feel real anymore. I kept my hands tight on the wheel, my foot glued to the gas pedal, watching the road stretch endlessly into the night. The sky was black, too black. No stars, no moon. Just this yawning emptiness above me, swallowing everything. I checked my phone again. No signal, no Wi-Fi. The last message still sat on my screen, like a wound that refused to close. Turn around. I didn't. I kept going, past empty gas stations, past lonely billboards with peeling paint, past things on the side of the road I refused to look at. My headlights barely cut through the dark, but sometimes, just sometimes, I swore I saw figures standing along the shoulder. Not hitchhikers, not people, just figures. Tall, too tall, standing perfectly still, facing the road, facing me. I told myself it was just my imagination. I told myself a lot of things, but I knew. Deep down, I knew. The road didn't feel right. None of this did. I had to get off the highway. I took the next exit, which led into some small town I'd never heard of. Kind of place with one diner, one gas station, and a church that looked like it hadn't been used in years. The gas station was still open. A flickering neon sign buzzed, 24/7. I pulled in, my car rolling to a stop beside an old rusted pickup. The lot was empty. The air outside smelled stale. I stepped inside. A little bell jingled overhead. The place was silent. No music. No buzzing fridge coolers. Just the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. A man stood behind the counter. He was in his 50s, balding, wearing a dirty red polo with a name tag that had no name. His eyes flicked up to me when I walked in. Didn't say anything. Didn't even blink. Just stared. I forced myself to walk to the drink cooler, trying to ignore how my own footsteps sounded wrong against the tile. I grabbed a random bottle of water and made my way to the register. The man never looked away. His eyes were too dark, too deep. When I set the bottle down, his lips parted. His voice was slow, flat. Long drive? I swallowed. My mouth was dry. Yeah, I said, just passing through. The man didn't nod, didn't move at all. Then, just as I was reaching for my wallet, he said something that made my stomach turn to ice. You were supposed to keep driving. I froze. My fingers went numb. I forced out a nervous chuckle. What? The man didn't answer. He just stared at me, unblinking. I felt something move behind me. The air shifted. My skin crawled. I turned my head just enough to see the security camera feed mounted on the wall behind the counter. There were 2 figures standing just outside the gas station doors. Tall, motionless. I hadn't heard them walk up, hadn't heard the bell ring. They were just there. I couldn't see their faces. Their heads were tilted at an odd angle, like broken dolls. The man behind the counter leaned in, whispered, almost too quietly to hear. They don't like when you stop. I didn't breathe, didn't move. I felt them watching me. They weren't coming inside. They were waiting. The cashier's fingers twitched against the counter. His nails cracked and yellowed. He looked past me, toward the door. Then, in a voice so low I could barely hear it, he said, "There's a back exit. Use it. Leave your car." My pulse pounded in my ears. I didn't question it, didn't hesitate. I took one slow step backward, then another. Then I turned and bolted. The back door led to an alley behind the station, lined with dumpsters and a single flickering streetlight. The air was too still. The town was too quiet. I kept moving, ducking between buildings, avoiding the streets. Every window I passed, I saw faces. Not real faces, just shapes. Shadows standing in darkened rooms, heads tilted, watching. I didn't stop. I kept going until I found another road, one leading back into the woods. No streetlights, just trees, pressing in on either side. I didn't care. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs were screaming. I ran until the gas station was gone, the town was gone, and all that was left was me and the road and the things that watch us. I don't know how long I've been walking. My phone is dead. My legs are weak. But I keep moving because I know if I stop, they'll be waiting. And this time, they won't let me leave. I kept walking. I don't know how long. The road stretched endlessly ahead of me, cracked asphalt disappearing into a forest so dense that the sky barely existed anymore. The air felt heavy, thick, like something was pressing down on me. I couldn't hear the wind. I couldn't hear animals, just my own footsteps. And sometimes, something else. A second set, a third. Footsteps that weren't mine, keeping pace. But whenever I turned around, nothing. Just the road, just the trees, just that overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. I tried to tell myself I was just tired, sleep deprived, losing my mind. But then, after what felt like miles, I saw it. A single gas station, identical to the one before. Same flickering neon 24/7 sign. Same rusted pickup truck in the parking lot. The same. Exactly the same. My stomach twisted. I turned, looking back the way I came. The road was gone. No trees, no asphalt. Just an empty, endless blackness. Like the world had been swallowed. I turned forward again, my breath catching in my throat. Something had changed. The gas station door was open, and the cashier, the one with the nameless name tag, was standing in the doorway, his eyes locked onto mine. And then he smiled. Not a normal smile. Too wide. Too many teeth. Like his skin was splitting apart. "You took too long," he said. The words didn't sound spoken. They felt place, like they were inside my head. I took a step back. He took a step forward. Then, from somewhere deep in the woods, I heard a sound that made every nerve in my body scream. A high-pitched, distorted screech, like metal being torn apart, like something big was waking up. The ground shook. The neon gas station sign buzzed violently, flashing erratically. The air itself seemed to vibrate. I turned and ran, straight into the darkness. I don't know how long I was running. The forest should have ended. There should have been a highway, a house, a way out. But the trees just kept going and going. And then they stopped. I burst into a clearing. The ground beneath me was wrong, smooth, almost like plastic. And in front of me, a house. Not an old house, not a cabin. A perfect suburban home. White walls, a red door, a single porch light flickering weakly. And through the front window, I could see a figure standing inside. I should have turned back. I should have run. But I didn't. I stepped forward, and the door swung open. Inside, the air smelled like nothing. Not dust, not wood, just emptiness. The figure I saw through the window was gone. The furniture was untouched. The TV sat in the corner, black screen reflecting me. But the me in the reflection wasn't moving. I took a step forward. My reflection stayed still. Then, slowly, its head tilted, and it grinned. Something moved upstairs. A single, heavy footstep. Then another. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. Coming closer. The air grew heavier. I turned, but the front door was gone. Only a blank wall. I was trapped. I ran through the house, looking for another way out. The kitchen, the bathroom, the hallway leading to the stairs. Each room was wrong. The pictures on the walls had no faces, just blurs where eyes should be. The clocks didn't move. The shadows were too long. And upstairs, the footsteps stopped. A whisper. Not words. Not sound. Just a pressure against my skull. Then, the lights flickered, and at the top of the stairs, a figure stood. Tall. Still. But its face, it was mine. No expression. Just watching. And when it opened its mouth, the lights went out. I don't remember what happened next. I woke up somewhere else, lying in the middle of a road. No trees, no gas station, just a city. Cars passing, people walking, like nothing had ever happened, like I had never left. My phone buzzed. A new message. You saw too much, but we're giving you another chance. Forget this, or next time, you stay. I checked the date. 2 weeks had passed. I don't know what's real anymore. The messages stopped. The text disappeared from my phone. My laptop, gone. My car, gone. Like I had never owned them. Ethan never existed. My dorm, never enrolled. It's like my life before this never happened. But I know. I remember. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear the footsteps.